channel. So welcome everybody. This is the Zero Waste Swaps class to save money, time, and resources. And I am the Executive Director, Amanda Miller, for the South King Tool Library. We're your hosts tonight. So bear with me. This is kind of the first run at anything in this subject matter, or even me leading a class like this. So bear with me. And yeah, we can definitely make this customized to kind of what your questions are, what your needs are, and let that shape the evening. But this can be a great resource. So I'm glad we can record this for everyone. And yeah, let's get started. Maybe. Okay, there we go. There's me in case you haven't seen me before. Well, that's me with a mask on. So here's the rest of my face. And then there are my cute little humans that I have pretty much made. They are bigger than these pictures now. These are kind of old pictures, but like I just said, I'm the Executive Director of the South King Tool Library. I'm a mom, I'm a Federal Way resident, I'm a Soroptimist of the city of Federal Way, and I'm an East Coast transplant, and I think some of the things that I might bring up, it's kind of relevant in that, just to give you a tad bit more too. I grew up in a few different households, but my grandparents were a big influence on me, and they, as you might imagine, were of an era that was much different than my age group is now. And they also came from Mennonite and Amish backgrounds, which are East Coast based kind of demographics that don't do a lot with electricity and do a lot of food preservation, a lot of DIY, if you want to call it that. So that really influenced a lot of my upbringing and maybe where I'm approaching things in this class, because yeah, it seems very intrinsic to me and very personal. So let's see, the buttons don't work, I have to click. Oh yeah, this is the important stuff. Big thank you to the Washington State Department of Ecology and the EPA Region 10 providing grant funding to support this event. And I have to put a disclaimer in here that all of my suggestions and opinions expressed during this do not reflect either the EPA, the Department of Ecology, or necessarily the South King Tool Library. They are mine and mine alone, in as much as if they're good, then you know, let that be a good indicator of these people that we're working with as well. They have educated me and taught me quite a lot, so I appreciate that. Yeah, and with that, I was just gonna do a first like intro survey in a poll, and this is the first time I'm using polls, but it's pretty straightforward. If you can't see the poll, the 3 questions are on the screen as well, and I'll read them out once I get that started here. So I'm going to launch it. But the first one is, what do you already do to reduce your waste? And then if you could guess, what is mostly put into your trash and garbage? What are your biggest contributing factors in trash and garbage? And then the last question is, when you hear zero waste, what does it make you think about? Because it can be something you might have experience with, something you might have read about, something that you might just be learning about. But I kind of want to know, if you don't mind sharing, what it makes you think about. The first question about what you do already to reduce your waste might not be something that you had thought about, but I can guarantee all of you have done at least something on this list to contribute to that waste reduction strategy already. So I'll give it just a minute here, and no pressure if you're on a mobile and you can't do that. You can unmute and speak, or you could type in the chat, whatever's easier for you. I'll give it just another minute. Pretty small class, so I'm not gonna, hold anyone's feet to the fire. But let's see. All right, if I end the poll, no pressure. So yeah, a lot of people buy secondhand, compost, repair, use tool library, recycle in the curbside bin, and use the reusables, which is great. Plastic from packaging, that's going into the garbage bin. Yeah, plastic from packaging, plastic containers, napkins, paper towels. That is what I hear a lot. And then near zero waste, let's see, everything that is waste is recycled or repurposed. Awesome, cool. Well, I guess I can share that with you guys, which is great because we're going to talk about a lot of these things. And it just gives me extra good reference for it. Oh, we lost Shiloh. So it's definitely, we all know each other now, or I don't know if you know Ket. Ket is our program manager, so she's fabulous, but now I know all of you. So it's even better. All right, let's see. So who, what, why? Yeah, this is just the basics of how zero waste affects us and what zero waste means. I had the opportunity to join King County's Zero Waste Task Force a year and a half ago, and came to find out that zero waste means different things to different people. Zero waste in my mind is not producing a lot of waste, not producing anything that has to be necessarily recycled or repurposed, but in governments and in other institutions, it means as long as there is a potential, not necessarily insured, but a potential secondary market, then they consider that recyclable. And that is what zero waste would involve. And then, yeah, it can be a lot of stuff. So it's an incremental thing, you know, one piece, one step at a time. And then of course, why? I probably don't have to tell any of you, but as a society, as a world, we have a lot of stuff. We have too much garbage. We throw away money, we pay for things and literally put them right into the garbage. And we have the ability to change habits because that is the number one contributing factor to, in my opinion, waste, because habits are something that we have to consciously really alter. So that's addition by subtraction. And that's more of addition to your quality of life by subtracting things from that. So let's see, I'm realizing that I can't see my notes, but that's okay. So first thing, what makes our numbers greater than zero? And oh, we got another person. So I kind of narrowed it down to a few categories here. Welcome if you're just joining us. But these are the ones that I really wanted to touch on, and I'll go over each of them, which I think, you know, we talked about packaging is definitely one of the big things, but also considering recyclability for things, repairability, energy efficiency. And the first one is that embodied carbon. Embodied carbon, embedded carbon, and then why we throw things away kind of go hand in hand with our biggest contributing factors. So let's talk about what garbage we have. I think embodied and embedded carbon has become a new passion of mine because I have fallen down many rabbit holes, including this one that you see on your screen. I won't make anybody feel silly, but if you want to guess what that thing is, I can give you a second. Clearly things on the other side, you have a field, you have oil rigs, you have a tree, you know, farm maybe, or maybe that's just a forest that was mined or milled there. Anybody want to guess what the thing on the top is? I had my kids guess, and my son guessed that it was a dinosaur. My daughter guessed it was an underground tractor, which she wasn't wrong. But that is actually a mine in Wyoming. It is mining soda ash, which is turned into baking soda. So everything that we have in our whole lives, all sitting around us, the computers that we're staring at, are made from other things, obviously. Molecular biology helped me through parenthood because I could not wrap my mind around dealing with poops and pees, and on a molecular level, they're just food that has become other things. So I am acutely aware of what molecular structure of things has played into their composition. And that's just something that we don't take for granted, but it is something that's brought into the conversation because those are things that you cannot reverse, you cannot recycle. They are embedded in that. That's the British terminology for it, believe it or not. We call it embodied carbon. They say embedded. Tomato, tomato. It's the things that are already spent to get the thing to you. So it's something that is pretty important because as you're going through making choices about reducing waste, there is a really strong urge in our society to consume more in order to produce less waste, which doesn't really line up with what you're trying to do. So next thing I wanted to say was what we are throwing away. Packaging. And really, there's just a few factors that go into what we throw into a garbage can. So the number one thing that I think is unavoidable is safety and health, because there are so many levels to it, and that is a difficult subject. So I won't talk too much about options there other than maybe like a toothbrush, like the other options. But trusting your healthcare providers is what I advise above all else, and trusting what they have to say about what you need to use. But packaging, things that break, things that are used or single use, or maybe they're multiple uses, but they have terminal lives. So just a couple of examples there. And yeah, the ways to approach those and reducing the waste that they pose for us would be to question your packaging. A lot of people I've shared, you can actually choose different options on Amazon to reduce your plastic. If you go to their sustainability section in your profile, they'll just ship you things in only recyclable formats. But really, we don't have a lot of options when it comes to packaging. Sometimes you can choose a paper versus plastic option when you're shopping, but not always. And then if there are options, right, they're not always options. So breakdowns, can't tell you how many times at the tool library we encounter breakdowns on the daily, but warranties are usually about 2 months shy of exactly when you need them to be. And then the other option is, who can even fix things? Where do you even take things to be fixed? The parts and pieces available cost more than the actual thing does. And some people are very limited by their ability to repair. So there's just a lot of issues when it comes to those breakdowns that happen. And then safety. Is it safe to use? If it's not safe to use again, then how do you gauge exactly what that looks like? So used items, of course, I don't have to really explain that. If it's empty, if it's single use, if it's not reusable, rechargeable, cleanable, recycle on the very first level where you can recycle it, then it's used, it's spent, it's gone. So urban burden is something that I came up with when I joined the Zero Waste Task Force for King County. And it's not maybe a new concept, but calling it this and really synthesizing the need to address it is something that I tried to bring attention to. And that's the fact that you might not even have a choice. If you live in an urban or even suburban, like our area, region, but you are limited by the resources available to you, the types of stores, the places that accept your form of payment, if you're paying with a certain type of assistance, or if you receive any type of assistance, or maybe just receiving something that you can't choose an option, then you have an undue burden that you're paying both on the front end and the back end for disposal, possibly of more garbage. So in some environments and in a lot of places that we currently live as a global marketed society, global network, we don't have a choice to even shop effectively. We can't see the true cost of what it takes to manufacture things. We don't see the true disposal rate. We don't know what we're actually getting until we've gotten it and it's gone. So just excited to share that with you guys. But the next thing about waste, because if we don't know what we're addressing, then we don't know how to address it. So I'll spend a little bit more time on waste with me, so bear with me here. Proper recycling, wish cycling, and voting with your dollar kind of goes in line with that urban burden as well. But proper recycling and wish cycling is something that I also encounter at the tool library. We host recycling events, and what that has brought to light for me is that a lot of the things that people believe are recyclable in their curbside bin are absolutely not, and we don't know why, and we question it and we have to push back. But what it boils down to is, it has to fit in certain categories that recyclers accept. And that is just an established guideline because they have limitations as well. They don't have a secondary market for it. They don't have the ability to process things. So to question that, hoses is something that people actually ask me all the time. How do you recycle a hose? And they're made of so many different components that it's really impossible. So the creative solution to this is, can it be repaired, repurposed, donated, scrapped, or recycled somewhere else? So I have a link here. I can send all these links out to you guys too if you're interested, but there's a really nice resource on like what exactly is accepted by certain recyclers, and secondary markets is something that I don't think many people know about. So up in the right-hand corner, you see the little recycle symbol. We all love that guy, but it doesn't mean what you think it means, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be recyclable in your jurisdiction. So you definitely have to research what is accepted by your hauler. I just had a conversation with my sister yesterday, actually, and it broke my heart because my home city stopped accepting recycling altogether. They don't accept it at all. So they have probably lost a lot of their secondary markets, and you guys will see when things change with different haulers, different contracts, they won't be able to accept certain different things. So definitely keep that in mind. And wish cycling can contaminate, throwing away things into recycling that is not accepted by the recycler can be more harmful because it can damage their equipment and affect what they will accept in the future as well. So, all right, I feel like I'm just going off on all my tangents here. I love it. Which brings me to the MRFs, the recycling facilities. You can visit virtually the tours for your hauler. Usually Waste Management has them available. Some of the other haulers in the region do as well. And then definitely checking your recycling guides, manufacturers' guidelines, and safety, because some of things like lithium-ion batteries or other maybe self-contained things are very combustible. Certain chemicals reacting with other chemicals can be very dangerous for people, your garbage workers, or even people that are just exposed to them on the curbside. And yeah, it's just a big gap for people that are potentially going to be encountering your items. So let me see here. And right, the secondary markets, I already kind of talked about that. So if there's not a demand for the items to be recycled, so who is using secondary market plastics? Do we even know? How could we even tell if they're doing that? We have a great example here at the tool library. Trex is a totally recycled manufacturer of lumber. Kind of, it's basically takes your recycled bags and puts them into boards for decking. So that's a fabulous way to see that in work. But I said supporting those secondary markets is a great way to do that. But how do you do that if you don't even know that that happens? And that comes back to this idea of voting with your dollar. which I've heard my whole life. I don't know if you guys have heard that too, but you're supposed to make influential changes in a capitalist system by buying the things that support what you support as well. So somehow you should go to the grocery store and know the litany background of everything that is there, and that's just not possible. But I do suggest that you research some things that are you maybe very passionate about, that are something that you really fundamentally believe in. Veganism is definitely an easier way to see if something is from an animal, then obviously that is something that you want to avoid if you are vegan. But if you just have a proclivity to, lean one way or the other, it almost becomes like a scientific research program. So I know I tried to do it for this class and it was epic failure, but it's an ongoing process to learn and to understand this whole background with what you're buying, where it comes from, how it's affecting the environment, or other factors. If it's sustainably made, is it necessarily made in the US, or is it made without slave labor or fair wages, or is it made without harmful detriments to the environment? So your best way to balance those things is to buy local as little as possible and support those businesses that you do know align with your beliefs. Oh yeah, and this is the scary picture. I only put a couple of these in there because they thoroughly do disturb me. And again, my kids came up when I was doing this presentation, like, what is that? So I got to explain to them exactly what this is. If you don't know, there are about 10 companies that actually own most of the brands that you see here. I think it's 152 brands that are in most grocery stores. So it's difficult because not all of, General Mills doesn't put their things on everything that they manufacture necessarily, and neither does Unilever. This is just food, by the way. Here's a couple more. Here's the beauty manufacturers, and then apparel manufacturers. There was another one that was beer, but I don't like beer as much as I like, beauty and apparel. But I thought this was really interesting to see kind of how the money flows, where it goes on any given day. And you can definitely look those up. I can send those to you as well. Oxfam is a great resource for those. So how do you thwart the onslaught of trying to memorize all of those charts? Is you buy local, buy small, buy less, and you make those swaps. So now, let's see, half in, sorry. Now we get down to the good stuff, which is making the swap. So I broke this up again into a couple different sections and then some subsections under that, because there's just so much, and I'm not going to tell you go and buy this thing. It's more about how you decide on what you're going to buy. So I'm literally trying to teach you how to reprogram your brain. And Chris can tell you that's not easy, right, Chris? So the first thing, shine this back. First thing is replacement. We had a really great teacher, Denise Frakes. Oh, there we go. Has taught our green living classes and clutter clearing. And I love her approaches, room by room, day by day, one by one. So don't think that you need to go home and just throw everything away. It's room by room, day by day, or one by one when you're approaching how you replace the items that you think are not serving your purpose anymore. Not following trends, not doing the cool thing as I sip from my reusable cup with my reusable straw. It's better than plastic, but try not to follow trends. It's cool one day to have a homemade, handbag, and the next day it's not. So it's never going to be consistent. And then replacement or displacement. And I was like, that's kind of not what exactly I mean, but I think you can all relate to the onslaught of reusable bags and how every single place has their own reusable bags now. And there's so many, you have to kind of stop and think, like, did we do better by not having those plastic bags, or are we producing more because everybody's producing all these reusable bags that are more labor intensive, more resource intensive? So don't displace as much as you can. And then ask yourself, of the items, where does it come from? And then where can it go? Is this going to stay with me for the next 25 years? I have a shopping bag that I bought literally 20 years ago that I still have today. It has Frida on it, as a matter of fact. And I have Frida on my shirt today. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that I had something for my entire adult life that I can use and call back to. And then, does it make you happy? Does it stress you out? It shouldn't stress you out. And the more you stress yourself out, the less you're actually going to do it. So you have to definitely align what works for you in your time, your space, wherever you are at that time. So the first one category that I wanted to really dive into is the big ticket items. And it is difficult to look at big things as potential ways to reduce waste because they are very resource intensive. They're logistically intensive when it comes to transportation and distribution. I spent a decade in distribution, so that gives me some context for how supply chain logistics works, and it was in a global market. So it was really revealing to me how much energy, literal energy and figurative personal energy is spent on logistics of items moving around our global economy. But reviewing things, talking to your friends, asking questions. I don't love reading slides, so I can send these to you guys if you want to, but I'm going to go over the main bullet points so I don't bore you all to death. Really considering your habits. Reducing redundancies, I think, is something that I had to learn. Those grandparents of mine were also caterers and amazing cooks, and they taught me to appreciate a good kitchen gadget. But what I found is that I have one thing that I really like to use, or I have a couple things that I'm comfortable using, and I don't ever really use some of those specialized equipment things. So why I would get them, why I need every single thing to do something else, doesn't always serve you. So reducing those redundancies, if you can get, one functioning item to do maybe the job of three. And then something I'm pretty proud of is the tool library. Community resources like libraries of things. The tool library is one aspect of it. In Federal Way, we're really lucky. We have even sharing pantries for PPE and medical equipment. My daughter would love to start a toy library. I don't really think she's thought that one through, but think of things like renting skis or renting, canoes when you go to different areas recreationally. There's a bit of a habit that we have as a society to possess everything, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. And then my favorite one is getting creative. Upcycling is a great way to reduce your need and a huge, dollar value burden for new and improved items in your life. Which brings me to quality of life and gifts across the board. Self-care is the buzzword now, and it makes me cringe a little bit, not just because I have a personal problem with like creating space for myself, but because, you okay? All right. But I think quality of life is something that people really don't want to compromise when it comes to reducing their impact on the environment and their community, their consumption patterns. So it becomes almost a scapegoat. So let's talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. I just wanted to bring that up as a big factor for how to change your mindset. So the next section, I try to come up with an acronym for it, but QCLQDE is a mouthful, but I summarize it as conscious consumption. So question everything, which is like my motto in life anyway. Comfort and favor are kings. So if it makes you comfortable, if it's what you're in favor of right now, because you're going to use it, you're going to maximize it, then let that be a good governing principle. Learn about components, ingredients, where things come from, and originate. Quality over quantity, which is something that we say, but we don't always understand. And then there's no other way to put it. Dates on food are not good guidelines, period. They're just not a shorter way to summarize that. And experience is the best teacher. So let your experiences guide how you're going to consume in the future. I know that I could not cloth diaper my kids. That broke my heart. But I knew that I was going to just get them potty trained as soon as possible. And that was going to be the way that I was going to overcome it. So I know, I hope you don't get sick of me talking about myself, but this is a lot of very personal, you know, from my lived experience. So yeah, the next section is just talking about general reusables, or all of those swaps that we want to make in our lives. So I'll give you some examples, some guides, and kind of go over these section by section. First one is going to be, just questioning everything, general reusable swaps. Most of you guys said that paper towels, you know, are definitely something that all of us have come to expect and use in our daily lives. But generationally, that didn't happen until the past 25, 30 years. Cotton dish rags were predominantly used. And then things like microfibers, or what even you have. I've seen a lot of really great flannel squares that are reused. Other materials can be reused as well. So I'm not going to read all of these to you. There's just a ton of examples, but these are primarily things that are in our daily lives that we can easily make a change for. You probably have already tried to do some of these things, and the success or failure of that can make you really change your mind about how you're approaching zero waste. So plates and cups seem intrinsic, but I do know that there are families and people that live on entirely disposable plates, cups, and cutlery. Circumstantially, that is maybe the only option that they have. And that goes back to that urban burden aspect where people do not necessarily have those options. But making the switch can save money and time and, of course, the environmental impact that they have. Another aspect of that is events and holidays. There's a great program on Vashon where you can borrow party kits where you know, are going to entertain 50 people. Well, when that was a thing before COVID, I went to a tool library meeting there, and there were, you know, 50, 60 of us, and we all had reusable plates and forks and knives and cups that we could have our lunch on. And that was fabulous. Also, to-go containers. I thought it was interesting because I had a suggestion that came to me that was, why not bring your own leftover containers to a restaurant with you? You're going out to dinner, might as well expect to probably bring some of it home. Our portion sizes are massive in society right now. So why not just have something in your purse ready to go? Maybe not on a first date, that might be a little loaded, but you know, in life, as we have things that we are aware of, we know we're going to go out to dinner, we know we're going to go to that restaurant that has gigantic portions, and we know we're going to come home with something. Why not throw it in your bag and bring it home? Another thing, convenience versus the consciousness. I'm really glad that our area has passed laws about straws, because I always have a straw with me, and I almost always forget to use it unless they don't give me a straw, and I have to use it. So, you know, those implications, those big legislative things that people wonder, why are we doing that, can have an effect, but you have to be able to react to it. You have to say, oh, I have a straw, I forgot, it's in my glove box. and bags. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that some things work better than others for people. And that is where I've researched personally from my lifestyle with children and tool library and work and things like that, that things like this, which I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is a bag. This is a reusable bag that condenses into a tiny little ball, and I can throw it into my bag. And well, no sponsors here, so I'm not going to show you who it was, but it's so much more convenient, and I use it so much more readily than having the big old hulking plastic, the big old reusable bags by my door. Leaving them in the back of your car. I've seen tons of tips and tricks for how to use your bags, but this has been the one that works for me. So try out different options. And then again, using what you have, which you can see, hey, that's in every single category, because you know what? You bought it for a reason, and it's already been expended. It's already has that embodied carbon in it. So using what you have to its fullest potential is just unquestionably the first thing. I know we said question everything, but that's the one question you don't have to ask. Use what you have. So if you have bulky bags, but you don't know how to use it, maybe find a way to store them that makes you utilize them more accurately. Same goes for these cute little wooden spoon and forks, knife sets. If it's cute and it makes you want to use them more, great. If it is something that you already have, that is the more valuable thing as well. But it's all about your habits and what's going to work for you. So you have to weigh and measure. Well, I would use it more if it was cuter, or I would use it more if I just put it in my bag. Figure out what works for you. Clothes and fabric. And this goes to that comfort and favor. If you have personal guidelines that you live by as far as veganism, or as far as you have allergies to certain materials, you already do choose and select your wardrobe sustainably, because you know that that's what you are going to be able to do. If you have an aversion to a certain texture, then don't force yourself to use it. Microfibers are one thing, through the classes and through other things that people really don't like. And don't get me wrong, that is totally allowable. There's also reasons that they might off-put microplastics. So do a lot of stretchy materials in clothes. There's so many factors to take into consideration here. So as you're buying it secondhand, because that embodied carbon's already there. We did a great thing in our last clothing swap and weighed all of our clothes that went out the door, and we saved something like 4 tons of carbon roughly from being produced, which is kind of a big deal. That helps people understand when you go and buy new, you are impacting the environment. Not throwing that shirt out the window isn't as impactful as the expenditure of carbon that it's taken for that to get to that store already. So use, looking at sustainable materials, secondhand, of course, long-term investment, things that you're going to wear over and over and over again, good quality, again, quality over quantity. And then the marketing for fast fashion is impeccable. Don't beat yourself up because you impulsively buy something, but think about that you're being tricked. That's the big thing for me, is before I spend my money, I want to know, like, who's making the decision here? Is it my big girl brain, or is it my, like, yay, my little girl brain who's like excited to have these new things in my life? Then keeping it, washing things has become a overproduction in our lives as well. Things happen as we're washing them. Inevitably, clothing degrades. It is not going to last forever, but the longer you can keep it in your closet, the better. Sorry, got a little sinus infection still, so yay. But those stretchy materials, the more you wash them, they're going to off-put plastics and put those into our waterways. So try to mend, upcycle, Or take things to thread cycle for recycle as well, or repurpose, right? Recyclability doesn't start and stop with somebody taking it away and making it into something else. Recycling it within your community using things like swaps and friend circles where you can trade if you're switching sizes. Pregnancy is a big one where you're fluctuating huge size differences, or in my opinion, in my experience, not everybody. That's a great way to keep things out of the waste stream, is to pass things on to friends and family. Ooh, sorry, I'm not getting upset about this. I just have these awesome sinus infection. The next category here was the cleaning and hygiene. Again, sorry guys, I've deep dive into this stuff, so don't feel like I'm going to read it all to you. The biggest thing I think I can drive home here is ingredients and expectations. So my big take on things like makeups and soaps are really using what I need as far as my my personal biology, but also questioning kind of my expectations, like what are my societal pressures, what are my personal pressures, what is my personal comfort level. And I have found especially makeup is something that I need less and less because I don't feel good about it. That's just my personal experience. You could have a very different experience. I know a lot of people that love makeup and it's a very passionate thing, but for me, it's just something that I don't find that I need. And I think I share that because we need to say that as a society, like it's okay. I'm a big proponent of shameless acceptance of body shape, size, and disposition, because there's so many factors that go into play there. Another factor here is, again, using what you already have, or recycling the dangerous thing. That goes more for your cleaning supplies. Questioning why you use certain things, and that has been maybe a big outlier from COVID, is the idea of cleanliness. If you haven't, green cleaning classes are a life changer to understand how the chemicals that you use in cleaning can actually be very detrimental. And it's dirt is not the enemy, it's the other things, right? Germs, bacteria. What the dirt indicates isn't necessarily a level of dirtiness, the things that you need to remove. So making your own is fun. I think the next page, yeah, I have some, oh, see, and I even didn't, I have an empty spot there just for you to add more, but there's an endless list of things that you can swap out to make more waste reduction choices. Shampoo bars are a great option because they don't require the packaging or the widespread distribution, or really that up the supply chain all going to Unilever or Procter & Gamble or whoever it is. Another aspect of that is people have horrible reactions to some ingredients and things. So you have to measure like what works for you, what doesn't. The same goes for a lot of those homeopathic essential oils, but incorporating things that you might have gone away from. I go back to my grandparents and those more basic components: baking soda, vinegar. I use dish soap and baking soda and vinegar and essential oils, and that is it. That's the only thing I clean my house with. I don't really know how. Maybe my house isn't as clean as it could be, but it's clean enough that my kids aren't, getting sick all the time. And those are really highly accessible things that don't cost a lot. Having specialized cleaners for different items strikes me as marketing ploys by a lot of people. So I'm maybe more hesitant for that. Now, there's other categories that things have to fall under in order to be safe. You don't want to use baking soda on everything. So knowing what you're approaching and what your issues are, what the problems are, can help you make better decisions. And as long as you're using it effectively, then that's the best bet here. The same goes for categories like period cups, reusable panties, and reusable pads and things like that for women, because it's usually women that we're kind of focused on this, and we have honestly a higher proclivity to be charged more for these items because we're the only ones consuming them. So taking that control back, using what you are comfortable with, what you can use, then if you're going to utilize it effectively, that is the better approach. Kids in homes, depending on your lifestyle, these things are very different. I put them together because kids could be a whole like 100 level college course. There's so many things that go into what kids want and need and have to have. But talking to them about your expectations and about what they need is the only way to really make effective household changes. So having them understand that, you know, secondhand toys are just as good as brand new toys, and making them participate in cleaning those reusable diapers, or having them participate in borrowing instead of buying. That can help change not only your household, but also their approach to life. And back to the kind of home aspects of this, where buying secondhand, you know, not just in your first home and, well, everything in my house came from Goodwill. Great, that means it came from somewhere else before that and you didn't have to buy it brand new. There's not a level of, it's not Animal Crossing. I don't know if you guys have ever played Animal Crossing. My daughter loves it. They score your house. They go in and they look at your decor and what you've made, and they give you a score. That is not how society works. We do not get scores on how cute our houses are, which is maybe not a good thing that Animal Crossing is teaching my kids, but we have to understand the difference between reality and fiction. But having healthy expectations is just going to be a better synthesis. Trying to impose your will on your partner or your roommates or your whole family is going to do nothing but lead to resistance and consternation when it comes to the changes that they could possibly make. So that's, again, just my 2 cents about how to do this. Looking at purchases as investments is also another really important quality, because there are so many factors that go into how and why we bring things into our home, that if it's not something that you intend to keep for a certain amount of time, you can set that deadline for yourself, then maybe don't bring it into your home at all in the first place. There's so many ways that could go. All right, let's see. Oh yes. So here are some creative suggestions. I'm part of a Facebook group that is Journey to Zero Waste, and I can send you all the link to it. It's kind of great. So I asked them what their most impactful swaps were for zero waste, and I've kind of peppered them in throughout these, but the water filtering system was a big one for me because around the nation, we have issues with the infrastructure that surrounds our water facilities. And there are people that rely heavily on the water quality, not just to live, but for their quality of life. So things like CPAP machines, even your electric kettle calls for distilled water. And if you go ahead and spend the money and investment in doing something like putting in a water filtering system or distilling system, I will bet you money that you will save money in the long run versus buying all of the bottles that you would need to do that. Even my fish, I have a fish and I have a bearded dragon, a reptile. Both of them require adjustments to their water quality before we can put it into their tanks. And then I think to myself, all we do is filter ours through a Brita. That's probably not enough. So this is on my list of, future investments for my household. So I wanted to make sure to share that with you. Bidet is another one that popped up in popularity during COVID and hopefully sticks around. Bidets are about $30 on Amazon if you don't want the heated ones. And there are other local resources that you can exercise to get one of those as well, but that helps all around. And then manual appliances tend to have less issues than your electrical appliances. I have a lovely manual grinder that I can take all the way apart and put all the way back together. And I cannot say that about most appliances in my kitchen that are electric, that's for sure. If I took them apart, I probably could not get them back together. And then enjoying the part of this where you can make your own aspect. I mean, that in and of itself can be a hobby. It could be a passion project, or it could be a pain in the butt and you don't want to do it. So don't necessarily, threshold yourself by saying, I'm going to make my own beeswax wraps and that's how I'm going to make sure that I like them. Maybe try the beeswax wraps before you start making your own. And then avoiding the redundancies, I already mentioned that. And again, long-term entertainment for things like the kids' swing sets, play structures, or hobbies and experiences. I'll get back to all of those in a little bit. So let's go on to food. And I already said, this is another one of our things, dates are not good guidelines because there is no system, there's no rhyme, there's no reason to what the dates are on your food. Some of them are best by dates, so they are suggested by the manufacturers that the product is very best by this date. Some of them are eat by dates because they are eat by, it's again not going to be the best by the manufacturer. Some of them are none of the above. They're just arbitrary dates based on the manufacturing processes that happen. And then, like me, you pull out a can of pineapple from 2014 from your cupboard because that happened in real life. And you realize, oh yes, I mean, let's see, what is that? 8 years, probably too long to really keep something, but most things, weeks or months even after their best by date, are not really indicative of what their quality is going to bring to your life. The other aspect of that is using things before they even have the chance to tempt you to want to throw them away. Proper storage is a big aspect of that, using every part of it, and then being able to preserve or repurpose the things that you're bringing into your home. My husband says that I like to play Chopped, which I don't know if you've ever seen this show, but it's a very fun one, and people get ingredients and then they have to make something out of those ingredients. And that is occasionally what I do in my pantry. I'll have barley and I'll have, green beans, and I'll make a barley green bean soup and no one will eat it. And then I'll realize that was more of a waste than it was a savor, even though it got it out of my pantry. So using it in an effective way is going to be the guideline there. If you won't want to eat it, then don't get it in the first place, but don't make it into something that you're going to regret. So research these methods as well with food preservation and making your own, but making your own options really inspires you to branch out. Kids are definitely more likely to eat vegetables and fruits when they see where they come from as they grow. I've recently branched into mushroom farming, if we can really even say that, but it's an educational experience. It's a fun experience. And just don't threshold yourself by thinking you can't do it. YouTube is an amazing facilitator of that. Plus the tool library has a lot of food preservation tools available. And there's just tons of resources available at the library on all of these processes to make your own items. So, all right. Gifts and self-care. This is a singular theme for me, but experience is a great value that we really underestimate in society. when it comes to gift giving, I'm a big person that loves to gives gifts all the time. I like giving more than I like receiving gifts. And I give gifts for no reason sometimes, which I had to unlearn, that giving gifts that are burdensome aren't a gift at all. It's just, it would be a problem. Another flower pot or another vase is not always what your friends need. So getting innovative when it comes to how you give and receive gifts. Again, being married for 10 years, I've learned that I have to make a list. Otherwise, I end up with odd things as gifts. And if I'm more specific, the more happy I'm going to be, because I know what I like. And if I know somebody has paid attention to what that is, even if it's by me sending them the exact thing, where it is, how much it is, then at least I'm getting something I know I'm going to use, or I know that it's going to give me that satisfaction. And the same goes for friends. If you don't know what to get them, don't assume, don't guess, ask. There's so many norms around these things. I couldn't even possibly get into it, but questioning those and saying, hey, instead of a housewarming gift, how about I make you a couple meals while you're moving into your new house? And the same thing goes for self-care, because when you start a road of self-care that is not sustainable environmentally or personally, I always think of manicures and fingernails, and I love them. Like when women have just amazing, or men, anybody has just really lovely nails, I always, wow, that's so nice. But immediately when I get them, I break them, and I do not do well with them. And I have learned that that is not even a fun experience for me, that I have to really push myself to understand what my self-care looks like. But the undue financial burden for experiencing self-care is something that is not a great benefit to our society. So understanding what really serves you and the future you. Is it a better investment for you to just take that $5 and add it up every day instead of buy that coffee? Or is it going to be something that you need to start your day off on the right foot, and that's going to be the way you do it? So be it. But just questioning what really brings you that satisfaction. Sparks joy. Marie Kondo said it. That's the same idea. And then, yeah, time is a huge value. Don't underestimate the value of time that friends and family can give you, or you can give to them. All right, so back to our conscious consumerism. That was never going to be a good acronym. I'm sorry that I tried to do that. So don't forget that hard things are worth doing. If they weren't, if they were easy, everyone would do them. And start out at square one. Go back, identify your problems, do a trash audit. Which doesn't sound very exciting, and probably isn't very exciting, but it's all the ways that you can examine how you consume and how you can change your consumption patterns. And then look at the problems and look at the opportunities. Understand what your perspective is. If you have physical limitations, do not beat yourself up about that. That is something that everyone has to overcome, whether it is physical, mental, or spiritual, whatever it is. So being kind to yourself is always paramount. And yeah, I just summarize it by saying, try, right? Nothing is ever accomplished unless you try. You have to research, check out what is going to be more appealing to you. I have to physically touch, fabrics on clothes for me to know whether I'm going to like it or not. So that is something that I know I have to do. And so my research is going and touching things, which sounds odd, but is perfectly reasonable when I'm thinking about making an investment in clothes. And then learn and play, have fun with what you're doing, because we learn through playing and we grow through playing. And that doesn't stop no matter the age you get. So try to play and have fun with what you're learning, which sounds easy and sounds, you know, opportunistic, but it's always an opportunity, right? And then always remember, consumption is not the answer. Consuming your way out of a consumption problem is just what is it? Didn't Einstein say if you go back and you keep trying the same thing and it's a level of insanity? I don't remember. Something like that. You know, if you're expecting to reduce waste, don't expect to be able to buy things to help you reduce waste. So what else do I have for you? Advocating, resources, sharing, talking to people, looking at legislation, paying attention to what you can do in your community, getting active in thriving nonprofits that are doing good things in your community to reduce waste, reduce consumption. And then I have a whole list of things. If you're not already part of Buy Nothing Facebook groups, I would encourage you to search for zero waste Facebook groups as well. Look at it as a journey. I can email these out to you guys, so don't feel like you have to have all of them copied down or anything, but there's really great resources on embodied carbon and carbon calculations in your life. And then, oh, I have a really nice book down here too called Mending Life that I just started reading. I got for my birthday. And that is about not just mending, but also some inspirational quotes, but how you can upcycle and fix things for yourself. Ooh, excuse me. I was making a run for it. All right, let's see. Yes, advocating. So talking to people, no matter how awkward the conversation is, no, don't sacrifice awkwardity for conversations about waste reduction, but try to make it a natural conversation with your circle of friends, family, and so on. And then, yeah, don't give up. Just be kind to yourself. Ask for help. Don't judge or shame others. And prioritize when possible and just never keep trying. And thank you. That's it. I did the whole thing. Cool. All right. I probably forgot some things, but I was going to give you another poll if everyone is still awake and I'm not terribly boring to you. It's 5 questions, so I apologize, but how about I stop recording, then we can ask our questions if you guys have any, and I'll launch that poll. So thank you guys. And maybe I'll stop recording if I can figure out how to do it. What's that do?